Raindrops pattered against the windshield as Karen white-knuckled the steering wheel, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Pulling into the gated community, she gripped her phone, its cracked screen a constant reminder of the betrayal that had shattered her world. It had started with a simple slip of the finger, a misplaced call that had revealed a shocking truth. Now, as she navigated the dimly lit streets, Karen knew she was on the precipice of a war, one that would test the very foundations of the Homeowners Association she had once controlled with an iron fist. Parking her car, Karen steeled herself, her gaze sweeping the shadows for any sign of movement. This was her domain, her kingdom, but tonight the rules had changed. Clutching her phone, she hurried towards her home, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. Slipping inside, Karen's eyes immediately landed on the flashing light of her landline. Snatching up the receiver, she listened intently, her breath catching as a familiar voice echoed through the receiver. "Hello, Karen. I believe you have something of mine." The words dripped with venom, laced with a twisted amusement that made Karen's blood run cold. "How dare you?" she spat, her fingers trembling as she gripped the phone. "This is my community, my rules. You have no right." "Ah, but that's where you're wrong, my dear," the voice interrupted, its silky tone laced with a dangerous edge. "You see, I've been playing this game far longer than you. And now, the board has been reset." Karen's eyes widened as realization dawned. You've been watching me, monitoring my every move." A low chuckle resonated through the line. "You're a quick one, Karen. But then that's what makes this all the more delicious. You thought you were in control, didn't you? Well, now the tables have turned." Karen's mind raced, searching for a way out, a loophole, anything that could give her the upper hand. The voice on the other end of the line knew her too well, had anticipated her every move. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What I've always wanted, Karen. Power, influence, and you're going to help me get it." A chill swept through Karen's body as she listened, the gravity of the situation sinking in. This wasn't just about a stolen phone, it was about the very foundation of her community, her kingdom crumbling beneath her feet. "I won't help you," she declared, her resolve hardening. "I'll fight you tooth and nail. You have no idea who you're dealing with." The voice on the line let out a low, menacing chuckle. "Oh, I think I do, Karen. And I'm looking forward to the challenge." With that, the line went dead, leaving Karen standing in the dimly lit foyer, her grip on the phone slipping as a wave of dread washed over her. She had always been the one in control, the one who dictated the rules. But now the tables had turned, and she found herself facing an enemy who knew her better than she knew herself. Steeling her resolve, Karen knew she had no choice but to fight. This was her community, her legacy, and she would be damned if she let anyone take it from her. With a renewed sense of purpose, she began to formulate her plan, determined to reclaim what was rightfully hers, no matter the cost. The rain had given way to a thick, eerie silence as Karen paced the length of her living room, her mind racing. The call had left her shaken, her carefully crafted world crumbling around her. But she refused to let her fears show. This was her domain, her kingdom, and she would fight to the last breath to defend it. Sinking into her favorite armchair, Karen began to piece together the puzzle, her keen intellect cutting through the haze of uncertainty. Whoever had her phone had been watching her every move, anticipating her actions with disturbing precision. It was clear that this was no simple thief, but rather a cunning, manipulative adversary who had been biding their time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As the realization sank in, Karen's grip tightened on the phone, her knuckles turning white. She had always prided herself on her ability to outmaneuver her opponents, to stay one step ahead of the game. But this time, the stakes were higher than ever before. Her very way of life, her power and influence within the community, was hanging in the balance. Steeling her resolve, Karen began to formulate a plan. She would need to be meticulous, anticipating every possible move her adversary might make. Reaching for her laptop, she began to sift through the digital records of the community, searching for any clues that might lead her to the culprit. Hours ticked by as Karen delved deeper into the data, her eyes narrowing with each new discovery. The Homeowners Association was a tangled web of hidden agendas, secret deals, and shady practices, a fact that had long worked in her favor. But now it seemed that someone had managed to unravel the threads, exposing the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. As she pieced together the puzzle, Karen's mind began to whir, formulating a plan of attack. She would need to fight fire with fire, using the very tools and tactics that had once served her so well. With a steely determination, she set to work, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she laid the groundwork for her counteroffensive. The night wore on, and Karen found herself lost in a world of spreadsheets, legal documents, and carefully crafted strategies. She knew that the path ahead would be treacherous, fraught with dangers that she could scarcely imagine. But she was no stranger to high-stakes battles, and she would be damned if she let someone take everything she had worked so hard to build. As the first rays of dawn began to peek through the curtains, Karen leaned back in her chair, a grim smile playing on her lips. She had a plan, a way to regain the upper hand and reclaim her rightful place at the helm of the community. All she needed now was the perfect opportunity to strike. Glancing down the phone in her hand, Karen felt a surge of determination. This was her domain, her kingdom, and she would fight to the bitter end to defend it. With a steely resolve, she set the phone aside and turned her attention to the tasks that lay ahead, ready to face whatever challenges her adversary might throw her way. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting a somber glow over the living room as Karen pored over the stack of documents before her. She had spent the better part of the night piecing together the intricate web of corruption and deceit that had been festering within the Homeowners Association, and the picture that emerged was anything but pretty. Shuffling the papers, Karen's lips thinned into a determined line. This was no simple theft. It was a calculated power play, a brazen attempt to seize control of the very community she had once ruled with an iron fist, and she was damned if she was going to let it happen. Reaching for her phone, Karen began to dial the numbers of her most trusted allies within the HOA. She knew that she couldn't take on this battle alone, not when the stakes were so high. She would need to rally her forces to mobilize the very people who had once answered to her with unwavering loyalty. As the calls went out, Karen paced the room, her mind racing the contingency plans and potential countermoves. She got to stay one step ahead of her adversary to anticipate their every move and strike before they had a chance to solidify their grip on the community. The first of her allies arrived within the hour, their faces etched with a mixture of concern and determination. Karen wasted no time in briefing them on the situation, laying out the evidence she had gathered and the scope of the threat they were facing. "This isn't just about a stolen phone," she said, her voice low and urgent. "It's about the very foundation of our community being threatened. We can't let them win, not without a fight." The group nodded, their expressions hardening as they absorbed the gravity of the situation. They knew Karen knew her fierce determination and her unwavering commitment to her domain, and they were ready to stand with her, no matter the cost. As the planning session wore on, Karen's mind began to whir, formulating strategy after strategy. She would need to move quickly to strike before her adversary had a chance to solidify their grip on the community. And she would need to be willing to play dirty, to use every trick in the book to reclaim what was rightfully hers. The hours ticked by, and as the sun began to set, the group finally emerged with a plan of action. It was bold, risky, and fraught with danger, but Karen knew that they had no choice. This was a battle for the very soul of the community, and she was determined to emerge victorious. As the others dispersed to carry out their assigned tasks, Karen stood alone in the dimly lit living room, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. She could feel the weight of the world on her shoulders, the responsibility of protecting everything she had built weighing heavily upon her. But she was no stranger to high-stakes battles, and she was determined to come out on top. With a steely resolve, she began to put her plan into action, her mind racing with the possibilities of what lay ahead. The stage was set, the players were in place, and the battle for control of the Homeowners Association was about to begin. The air was thick with tension as Karen strode through the dimly lit halls of the Homeowners Association building, her high heels clicking against the polished marble floors. She could feel the eyes of her adversaries boring into her back, their whispers echoing in the shadows, but she refused to let her confidence waver. This was her domain, her kingdom, and she would be damned if she let anyone take it from her. Reaching the ornate double doors that led to the boardroom, Karen paused, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. Behind those doors, her enemies were waiting, poised to strike at the first sign of weakness. But Karen was no stranger to such battles, and she was determined to come out on top. With a steely resolve, she pushed open the doors and swept into the room, her gaze sweeping over the assembled members of the HOA board. She could see the surprise and unease in their eyes, a testament to the power she still wielded within these hallowed walls. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice cool and measured. "I trust you've all had a chance to review the agenda for today's meeting." The board members exchanged uneasy glances, their silence telling. Karen allowed a faint smile to play across her lips, knowing that she held the upper hand. "Well then, let's get started, shall we?" she continued, her tone brooking no argument. "First on the agenda is the issue of the recent security breaches within our community. I trust you all have the reports I provided." Again, the silence was deafening, and Karen felt a thrill of triumph. She had them on the defensive, and she knew it. "As you can see, the incidents have been growing in frequency and severity," she said, her eyes sweeping across the room. "It's clear that we need to take immediate action to address these concerns." A member of the board, a man Karen had long suspected of corruption, finally found his voice. "What exactly are you proposing, Karen?" he asked, his brow furrowed with suspicion. Karen's smile widened, the predatory gleam in her eyes sending a chill through the room. "I'm proposing that we implement a comprehensive security overhaul, one that will ensure the safety and security of our community," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "But that will be costly," another member interjected, his face pinched with worry. We'll need to divert funds from other projects to make it happen. Karen's eyes narrowed, her gaze fixed on the man. I'm well aware of the financial implications, which is why I've taken the liberty of drafting a proposal that will address the issue without straining our budget. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Of course, it will require the full support and cooperation of the board. Are you all prepared to do what's necessary to protect our community? The silence that followed was deafening, and Karen could see the wheels turning in her adversaries' minds. They knew that they were cornered, that she held the upper hand, and they also knew that to defy her would be to risk everything. Slowly, one by one, the board members began to nod, their reluctance palpable. Karen allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. The first phase of her plan was in motion, and she was one step closer to reclaiming her rightful place at the helm of the Homeowners Association. The rain had returned, battering the windows of the Homeowners Association building as Karen strode through the dimly lit hallways, her high heels clicking against the polished marble floors. The tense boardroom meeting had been a hard-won victory, but she knew that the battle was far from over. Her adversary was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and Karen was determined to be ready, to anticipate their every move, and stay one step ahead of the game. Reaching her office, she paused, her hand on the doorknob. The sense of unease that had been gnawing at her ever since the theft of her phone had only intensified, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Steeling her nerves, she pushed the door open and stepped inside, her gaze sweeping the room for any signs of intrusion. Everything appeared to be in order, but the hairs on the back of her neck refused to lie flat. Crossing to her desk, Karen pulled open the top drawer, her fingers wrapping around the cool metal of the handgun she kept hidden there. It had been a long time since she had to resort to such measures, but she knew that the stakes were higher than ever before. Slowly, she made her way around the room, checking each corner, each hidden nook and cranny, her senses on high alert. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the steady patter of the rain against the windows. Just as she was about to let her guard down, a sudden movement in the corner of her eye caught her attention. Whirling around, she leveled the gun, her finger poised on the trigger. But there was nothing there, just the flickering shadows cast by the rain-soaked trees outside. Karen's heart pounded in her chest as she lowered the gun, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She was beginning to doubt her own senses, her nerves frayed by the constant stress of the situation. Holstering the weapon, she sank into her chair, her gaze fixed on the phone that lay on the desk before her. It had been the catalyst for this entire ordeal, the thread that had unraveled the carefully constructed web of controls she had woven around the community. And now it was the key to her salvation. Reaching for the phone, Karen began to dial a number she had long since committed to memory. It was a risky move, one that could potentially blow her entire plan wide open, but she knew that she had no choice. The line rang once, twice, before a familiar voice crackled to life on the other end. "Hello, Karen. I was wondering when you'd call." Karen's grip tightened on the phone, her jaw set in a determined line. "I want to make a deal," she said, her voice low and urgent. A chuckle echoed through the receiver. My, how the tables have turned. I must say, I'm impressed by your tenacity, Karen. But do you really think you have anything I want? Karen's eyes narrowed, her gaze hardening. Oh, I think you'll find that I have plenty to offer. After all, I know this community better than anyone, and I'm willing to give you what you want. The voice on the other end went silent, and Karen could almost hear the gears turning in her adversary's mind. She knew she was playing a dangerous game, but she also knew that she had no choice. This was her last, best chance to regain control and protect everything she had worked so hard to build. The silence stretched on, the only sound the steady patter of the rain against the windows. And then finally the voice spoke again. "I'm listening." The air was thick with tension as Karen sat in her dimly lit office, the phone pressed to her ear. Her adversary's voice had a dangerous edge to it, a subtle warning that she was treading on thin ice. But Karen was no stranger to high-stakes negotiations, and she knew that she had to keep her cool if she wanted to come out on top. "As you know, I have something you want," she said, her voice measured and calm. "The security codes, the financial records, the dirt on the board members. It's all at my fingertips." A low chuckle echoed through the receiver. "And what exactly do you want in exchange, Karen?" Karen's grip tightened on the phone, her knuckles turning white. "I want my kingdom back. The Homeowners Association, my control, my influence, all of it." There was a moment of silence, and Karen could almost feel the weight of her adversary's gaze boring into her. "That's a tall order, my dear. What makes you think I'm willing to hand over such power?" Karen leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing. "Because you know as well as I do that without my cooperation, you'll never be able to fully take control. The community is my domain, and I hold all the cards." Another chuckle, this one laced with amusement. "Ah, yes, the infamous Karen White, always one step ahead of the game. I must admit, I'm impressed by your audacity." "So do we have a deal?" Karen asked, her voice brooking no argument. The silence on the other end of the line stretched on, and Karen could feel the tension coiling in the pit of her stomach. This was a critical moment, a make-or-break point in her plan, and she knew that she couldn't afford to let her guard down. Finally, the voice on the other end spoke, its tone measured and deliberate. "Very well, Karen. You've made your point. I'll agree to your terms, but only on one condition." Karen's heart raced, her mind racing with the possibilities. And what might that be? "You must agree to work with me, to be my eyes and ears within the community. I want you to be my puppet master, pulling the strings behind the scenes." Karen's brow furrowed, her mind working overtime. It was a risky proposition, one that could potentially backfire if she wasn't careful. But she also knew that she had no choice. This was her only chance to regain control, to keep her kingdom from falling into the hands of her adversary. "Fine," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do it, but I want complete autonomy within the community. No interference, no second guessing. My word is law." There was a pause, and then the voice on the other end spoke again, its tone tinged with amusement. "Ah, there's the Karen I know and love. Very well, you have a deal." Karen let out a breath. She hadn't realized she'd been holding a sense of relief washing over her. She had done it. She had managed to outmaneuver her adversary and regain control of her kingdom. But as she hung up the phone, a sense of unease began to settle in the pit of her stomach. She knew that this was only the beginning, that the true battle was yet to come. Her adversary was cunning, manipulative, and not one to be trifled with. And as the rain continued to patter against the windows, Karen knew that she would have to be at the top of her game if she wanted to keep her kingdom from falling into the hands of her enemies. The air was thick with anticipation as Karen strode through the halls of the Homeowners Association building, her heels clicking against the polished marble floors. The deal she had struck with her adversary was a risky one, but she knew that she had no choice if she wanted to regain control of her kingdom. Reaching the door to the boardroom, she paused, her hand resting on the handle. This was it, the moment of truth. She could feel the weight of her decision bearing down on her, the consequences of her actions hanging in the balance. With a deep breath, she pushed the door open and swept into the room, her gaze sweeping over the assembled board members. They eyed her warily, their expressions a mix of confusion and unease. "Good morning, everyone," Karen said, her voice calm and measured. "I have some important news to share with you all." The board members exchanged uneasy glances, and Karen could see the wheels turning in their minds. They knew that something was up, that the power dynamics within the community had shifted. "As you all know, we've been facing a number of security breaches within our community," Karen continued, her eyes narrowing. "Well, I'm pleased to announce that I've been able to secure a solution to this problem." A murmur of surprise rippled through the room, and Karen allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. She was in control now, and she knew it. "Effective immediately, we'll be implementing a new security system that will ensure the safety and security of our community," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "This system will include state-of-the-art surveillance cameras, advanced access controls, and a dedicated security team to monitor the community 24/7." The board members exchanged uneasy glances, and Karen could see the unease in their eyes. They knew that this was a major shift, one that would have far-reaching consequences. "Of course, this new security system will require a significant investment," Karen continued, her gaze sweeping across the room. "But I can assure you that the benefits will far outweigh the costs." A board member, a man Karen had long suspected of corruption, rose to his feet, his brow furrowed with concern. "Karen, this is a major undertaking. Are you sure we can afford it?" Karen's smile widened, and she leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with a predatory edge. "Oh, I'm quite sure. In fact, I've already secured the necessary funding from our corporate partners." The board member's eyes widened, and Karen could see the realization dawning on his face. "Corporate partners? What are you talking about?" Karen chuckled, her tone dripping with a dangerous amusement. "Why, our new security provider, of course. They've agreed to provide the necessary investment in exchange for a share of the community's profits." The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, the board members shouting and gesticulating wildly. Karen waited patiently, her gaze fixed on the chaos unfolding before her. Finally, the din subsided, and a tense silence settled over the room. Karen took a step forward, her eyes narrowing. "Let me be clear," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "This is not a discussion. This is a directive. The new security system will be implemented, and any dissent will be met with swift and decisive action." The board members stared at her, their faces pale with fear and uncertainty. Karen knew that she had them right where she wanted them, that she had seized the reins of power once again. With a satisfied nod, she turned and strode from the room, leaving her cowed adversaries in her wake. The battle for control of the Homeowners Association had been won, and Karen was once again the undisputed queen of her kingdom. The rain had stopped, but the air still held a chill as Karen stood at the window of her office, her gaze sweeping over the meticulously manicured grounds of the Homeowners Association. It had been a hard-fought battle, a high-stakes game of power and influence, but in the end, she had emerged victorious. The new security system she had implemented was a testament to her resolve, a physical manifestation of the control she had regained over her kingdom. Every inch of the community was now under her watchful eye, her grip on the reins of power tighter than ever before. But as she stood there, her fingers drumming against the windowsill, a nagging sense of unease began to creep into the back of her mind. Her adversary had been cunning, manipulative, and not one to be trifled with, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from over. Turning away from the window, Karen crossed to her desk and sank into her chair, her gaze fixed on the phone that lay before her. It had been the catalyst for this entire ordeal, the thread that had unraveled the carefully constructed web of control she had woven around the community. And now it was the key to her salvation. Reaching for the phone, Karen began to dial a familiar number, her fingers moving with a practiced precision. She knew that she was taking a risk, that the stakes were higher than ever before, but she also knew that she had no choice. The line rang once, twice before a voice crackled to life on the other end. "Hello, Karen. I must say, I'm impressed. You've managed to outmaneuver me once again." Karen's lips thinned into a determined line. "I did what I had to do. This is my kingdom, and I'll be damned if I let anyone take it from me." A low chuckle echoed through the receiver. Ah, yes, the infamous Karen White, always one step ahead of the game. "But tell me, are you truly prepared for what comes next?" Karen's brow furrowed, a chill running down her spine. "What are you talking about?" "You see, my dear, the game has only just begun. This is not about a stolen phone or even about control of the community. This is about something much, much bigger." Karen's grip tightened on the phone, her heart pounding in her chest. "What are you planning?" "Oh, I think you know, Karen. You've always been a clever one, able to see the bigger picture. But this time, the stakes are higher than you could ever imagine." Karen's mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle. What could her adversary be planning that was so much bigger than the Homeowners Association? And how could she possibly hope to counter it? "Tell me what you want," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What I want, Karen, is to reshape the world. And I'm going to use you and this community as the cornerstone of my empire." Karen's eyes widened, a wave of dread washing over her. She had thought she had won, that she had reclaimed her kingdom. But now she realized that she had only scratched the surface of her adversary's true ambitions. "You're insane," she breathed, her mind reeling. Perhaps the voice on the other end replied, its tone dripping with amusement. "But I'm also a visionary, Karen, and with your help, I'm going to change the world." The line went dead, leaving Karen sitting in stunned silence, the phone clutched tightly in her hand. She had thought she had won, that she had regained control of her kingdom. But now she realized that the true battle had only just begun. With a deep breath, she set the phone aside and rose to her feet, her gaze hardening with determination. She may have underestimated her adversary before, but she wouldn't make that mistake again. This was her kingdom, her legacy, and she would fight to the bitter end to protect it. The rain had stopped, but the storm was just beginning.